This is the best game of Hikaru Nakamura, according to him, where he sacrifices his queen to force the king into the open, where he can checkmate the king. So Hikaru is playing with the black pieces, and Michael is playing with the white pieces here. And this is the English opening, the Neo-Catalan being played right now. So after d5, the bishop comes to g2, and Michael is looking to castle on the king side with the bishop on the diagonal. And Hikaru brings his bishop to e7, and Michael castles on the king side, and Hikaru does the same as of the fifth move. So early castling for both the players, and b3 by Michael, completing his pawn structure on the queen side and also allowing his bishop to come into the diagonal where he can attack or create a threat on the Hikaru's king. So a5 by Hikaru, pushing the pawn on the queen side, and knight to c3 by Michael, and c6 by Hikaru, completing his pawn structure and creating this nice little structure focusing on the central pawn, and d4 by Michael, bringing his pawns into the center and attacking the center, and knight to d7 by Hikaru, and the queen comes to c2, attacking the h7 square of the king, and b6 by Hikaru, which allows the bishop to come into any of these squares where he can counter the attack of the light square bishop, and e4 by Michael, attacking the central pawn, which is defended well, quite well, and but Hikaru brings his queen to bishop to a6, attacking the rook through an x-ray. So because this pawn is now pinned, and if you cannot take back with this pawn, and if you take back, your rook will be gone, and the knight to d2 is now played, because if Hikaru decides to capture this pawn, and once you capture back, the bishop can capture and you lose the pawn. So the knight ensures that that you do not lose a pawn in case of a capture, and c5 by Hikaru, now attacking this undefended pawn over there. So e into d5 by Michael, capturing the central pawn, and Hikaru goes and castles the undefended pawn, creating an attack on the knight, and the knight jumps to b5, cutting off this pin on this pawn. So pawn capture again by Hikaru, and the knight jumps back to d4, capturing that pawn, and the position is basically equal, and both the players capture their pawns. So now the rook comes to c8, and this pawn is still pinned against the rook, and now with the rook here, there's also an extra attack on the queen. And first Michael just moves his rook to e1 and gets the rook away from that attack, and after Hikaru just pushes his pawn to b5, attacking this pawn again, and now the bishop goes to b2, and the rook comes to e8, and the queen now gets away from that x-ray attack on it, basically from the rook, and now the pawns get captured, and now Hikaru brings his queen to b6, attacking this undefended bishop over here. So the bishop cannot retrieve to this square, and there's also an attack on the knight here. So you cannot move here. If you move here, your knight will be gone. So the only way is to bring your rook to b1, protecting that bishop and keeping the support on this knight over here. And after that, the pawn get captured back, and now the knight jumps to c6, and now here creating two attacks on this particular bishop. So either the bishop have to move, or you'll have to capture the knight. So interestingly, capturing the knight gives advantage to Hikaru, even though he's doing a sacrificial exchange of by going down the exchange purposefully, basically. So after that, Michael just captures this knight with the bishop over there. So you cannot capture back with your bishop, because after that then it will be a checkmate over here. So you'll have to capture with your knight or with your rook here. But Hikaru plays this stunning move and sacrifices his queen. And once the king captures the queen, the check happens, bishop to c5 check, which prevents the king from going back into the safe squares of the king. And the only option is to come down the board or to go back. So if you go back, it will be advantage. It is advantage black in any way. So if you go back, the following combination will happen, and your queen will be gone, and the following sequence will happen, and basically white will be down by a piece in this particular position. So the king from this position, the king came down to f3 here, and after that this bishop is now captured back by the rook with a check. So the king do not have anywhere else to go. It cannot go back. There is no way to cover the check. So it had to come to g4, and after g4 the knight jumps to e5 with a check, and the king can go to g5 here. It is possible to capture this knight. I'll show you that in the end what the line is. And after the rook places the check again, the king will have to go to h5, and then the pawn push of f6 creates a checkmate threat in one move. So actually here now the capture of this knight by the rook happens, and the rook get captured back with a check. So the king moves to h4, and now this bishop to c8 move ensures that there is no more retrieving squares for the king, because these two squares are covered by this bishop over here, and once the rook comes here it will be a checkmate. So basically Michael resigns from this position, and so let's say he played bishop to f3, and the check will happen like this, and it will be a beautiful checkmate with a pawn like this. So he could also play a move like a check, and sacrifice his bishop, and after that push the g4 pawn, but the following moves will happen, and it will be a checkmate like this with the bishop again. And you can also push g4 like this right away, preventing this creating this square for the king to retrieve to. But after the bishop goes to f2 check, the checkmate will happen like this, because this bishop of the light square bishop of white itself prevents the retreat of the king as well. So earlier there was another option. So from this position he could have just captured the knight with the rook, and even in such situation the following combination will result, and the game is like over once the queen is gone basically, and the black have a significant advantage and he will win the match. So basically from this position the game was over. So this was just possibilities that would have happened, and the best checkmate is this in this particular game. So thanks very much for watching. We'll be back with more such videos of Hikaru and others.